we thought we'd start with kind of introductions. We would review the partnerships and the different organizations that are supporting the schoolyard redevelopment projects. So just everyone has kind of a high level overview of who's who in the redevelopment process. And then we thought we would go through the kind of the timelines and process and spend a good 10-15 minutes just kind of getting grounded in what we can all expect over the course of the next year and coming years. And then we thought we would touch base on the next meeting. So this is the first cohort, kind of all of the 5 schools in the cohort getting together with all of the project partners. And then Lisa Neeb from Reflow has been coordinating with each of the schools to develop individual meetings as well to set schedules and kind of review communications plans tailored to each school. And then we just wanted to end up with other updates and next steps. Any thoughts or questions about this agenda before we jump into this? Okay. I'll just copy.
You guys shared this agenda?
Yep, I'll just paste it in the chat window there too, so you can see it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're gonna get into this. What may be best, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen as we go through the partner introductions here. So my name is Justin Haggerty, so I'm the guy waving. I'm the executive director of the nonprofit Reflow. I'm also an environmental engineer. Reflow has been working with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, and I'll ask Lisa Sasso to introduce herself for the past 5+ years on schoolyard redevelopment projects with CDS and the Fund for Lake Michigan and Milwaukee Public Schools. And so this effort is really great. It's many years in the making. You guys, the schools represent Cohort 5, and it's an annual cohort process. And we're excited to start things off for 2021. I'll ask maybe Lisa Neeb to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Neeb, Green and Healthy Schools Project Manager with Reflow. You will always be getting lots of emails from me coordinating our meetings moving forward. So I'm very happy to meet you and see your faces. I also, prior to working with Reflow, I was a formal educator. So I'm a high school science teacher, and I've done a lot of informal education at different centers, the zoo, Discovery World, and after school enrichment programs when I lived in Michigan. So very excited to meet all of you.
And before I ask Lisa Sasso to chime in and introduce herself in the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, I do just want to make a note that we are recording this session. Not everyone was able to attend this meeting, so we're recording it so we can share it with the other school representatives that are in your cohort as well. Okay, Lisa, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Lisa Sasso, and I work for the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. And MMSD, our main mission is to, protect Lake Michigan clean water through wastewater treatment and flood management. But through that comes green infrastructure, and that's what will be a big part of all of your school redevelopment processes. And in March, I'll go a bit more into detail what green infrastructure is, but it's really a natural way to soak up water and not have it run off that hard space that you guys all have at your schoolyards right now. So MMSD, we've been funding schools, both the conceptual planning and then the construction partially of those schools for over 5 years. MMSD sees a great value of the educational piece to it, reducing the flow from our sewer system. And then communities getting to use it, the schools, the students and their parents, and the community just really all being exposed to that. So MMSD sees a great value in the schools, and I will be a part of your meetings throughout this process, and you will also work with me later on in the construction phase as well. And congratulations on being Cohort 5.
Thank you, Lisa. So yeah, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, MMSD for short, they're sponsoring the conceptual planning process. So big thank you to MMSD for supporting this phase of work for sure. Also, so Carolyn, could you introduce yourself and UWM's Community Design Solutions, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Carolyn Eswine. I'm the Director of Community Design Solutions. We are a design center at UW-Milwaukee's School of Architecture and Urban Planning. And we will be working with you at all the upcoming meetings, preparing the drawings that get everybody excited. The process is also making sure that we know from you what are your priorities, and understanding where do you line up, and we can't put a new bioswale, and how does gym class use your playground, but what do you wish was there? How could it enhance your curriculum? And I'm going to have Rachel and Elise wave to you. So those are two of my staff. And I have two more staff that will be attending some of the meetings, Kelly and Burke. Rachel and Elise have done this for the last couple cohorts, so they're really familiar with the process. They'll be managing it. So the way my design center works is all of my staff are students. They're graduate students in architecture. So they are excited. It's a great experience for them, but they also have the knowledge to help have the conversation with you. So we're excited. We've done tours of those that have been implemented, so it's really rewarding on our end to see how this is changing, not just for your school, but for your neighborhood and your community. There's a pretty broad impact for the projects. So I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Karen. Great, and Denise just joined us. Denise Fields from the MPS Grants Department. Denise, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, we're doing just very quick introductions. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your role, and then also, MPS's perspective on the schoolyard redevelopment projects from a high level, maybe why MPS is supportive of these types of projects.
Okay, good morning. Sorry I'm late. I just got sidetracked. Working on something. Denise Fields, grant specialist, Milwaukee Public Schools. And we work with the team of green schools with larger parts of the grants to fund a lot of the green infrastructure, and work independently with the schools when you're searching for grants and applying for grants. And we work with you a lot for that. So we get to know you all really, really well in your fundraising year, but we support the green infrastructure. Is supported, each cohort supported by MPS. And I don't know what, Justin, if you went into Angeline's role at all, or if you're getting into that. Okay.
Not yet. If you wouldn't mind introducing Angeline couldn't join us today, but yeah, if you wouldn't mind just speaking to that.
Okay, sure. So just to let you know that there's also another grant coordinator, Jenny Bootsbach, who actually supports all schools in any fund that are smaller. I tend to focus on the state and federal level, but also work explicitly with the green school. So we have Jenny in there. Angeline Koch works with facilities and maintenance, and she works with you in making sure that we get through the process, that we follow all the rules, the bidding, the construction, what we can do, what we can't do within the structure of MPS, which is really important for that. So that'll be really the team from MPS that supports you through this whole process that you'll see in and out, and you'll get to know each of us quite well.
Thank you. Yeah, so just to kind of build off of what Denise just said, so Angeline Koch is the first MPS sustainability project specialist, which is really exciting. About 2 years ago, the district was able to raise funding in partnership with MMSD and the Fund for Lake Michigan to be able to have this full-time position to support sustainability initiatives across the district. And a large part of her role is to support these schoolyard redevelopment projects. But she's also working on alternative energy and water conservation and all sorts of other really important sustainability related things. And as we go through this process, there'll be opportunities for your schools to kind of plug into recycling and composting and all the other really important things. So we can certainly talk about that. And it would be really important to identify those different themes that you might be interested in during the conceptual planning process, because although it's not a part of the schoolyard redevelopment per se, it's helpful to understand what you guys are interested in on sustainability in general, so that we can plug you in appropriately when the time comes. The other person I want to introduce here that wasn't able to attend is Vicki Alkin from the Fund for Lake Michigan. The Fund for Lake Michigan is a private foundation in the Milwaukee area that has supported green and healthy schools for many years. Vicki is a big reason why these projects exist and this program exists. And she's very supportive behind the scenes to make these projects happen. So with that being said, have I missed any kind of major introductions outside of the schools? I think we're good. Okay. So with that being said, I think, I'll pause here. If there are any questions about who's who, you can enter it into the chat, or you can unmute yourself. You can ask a question before we jump into the process for the schoolyard redevelopment. Okay, great. So I'm just sharing my screen again, looking back at that, like an introduction of the partnerships. And in the smaller groups, when we organize the individual school meetings, we'll have a little bit more time to get to know each of the schools a little bit more individually. So I do want to kind of reserve that time to get to know you all a little better as well. But right here, it would be valuable to check in on the process. And we have this graphic here. You can download that if you want. I have it already downloaded on in a PDF, which is a little easier for me to share my screen on. But this process diagram we found to be pretty helpful in communicating where we are in the big picture. And this kind of 5-step process is very similar to really most projects, but in regards to the schoolyard redevelopment, which is a little bit more complex, it's really helpful to kind of designate these different phases of development. And we're color coding this, so conceptual planning is shown in this blue color. And if we look down here at the timeline, we'll spend all of 2021 in conceptual planning. And, we're really, we have our kickoff meeting right now, which is in February. Our individual meetings, our kind of individual kickoff meetings will also be in February with each of the schools. But then our first full school green team meeting, where we think about what you would like to see on your schoolyard, that's going to happen in March. And then we'll meet on a monthly basis going forward. We'll pause over summer, but we do have this annual Green Schools Conference. COVID is, of course, throwing a wrench into that, but that is a kind of a unique opportunity to get together over summer outside of the monthly school green team meetings. And it's also a unique opportunity for your schools to interact with other schoolyard projects as well, and share curricular connections and all sorts of good stuff. We'll talk more about that as we get closer. But the other part of this is continuing the conceptual planning as we get back into the fall semester. And we found that bridging the gap over summer and bridging 2 school years can be really helpful, especially if there's any transitions within the school leadership teams. Especially getting more feedback during this annual Green Schools Conference from other schools that can help us hone some of the ideas that you may want to have in your conceptual plan. So really finalizing that plan document in fall is really helpful. And then what we're really targeting is to be completely ready by the end of the calendar year, so that we can hit the ground running with grant writing and fundraising activities in January 2022. A lot of grants fall on this kind of calendar cycle, and we're kind of honing this process to get you guys ready to receive as many funds as we can get. But this diagram that kind of shows fundraising, we're showing that fundraising, school fundraising can certainly start before that 2022 calendar timeline. And depending on where you guys are, fundraising can start as soon as you can. There's really it's helpful to get as many funds as possible for these projects, and we can talk more about that. We just kind of want to denote here that we won't really turn the page on fundraising, and including the grants department and other kind of full steam ahead until January 2022. And then working with MPS facilities staff, Angeline Koch and others within facilities, MPS, depending on the grants obtained in early 2022, will issue an RFP, request for proposal, for consultants, engineering consultant teams, to take the conceptual plans that we create and turn those into detailed designs and permit applications. That's a very detailed process and it's down the line, and we can certainly talk about that. But that won't happen until, September-ish of next year. And then that's really getting us prepared so that we can go into construction in the summer of 2023. So the big one is, we're working backwards from construction over the summer of 2023. MPS Facilities really wants the construction projects on the schoolyards to be over summer to minimize any disruption to the academic year. So that's really important as well. Excitingly, last year, for example, for cohort 3, about $3.4 million was raised, and we have 5 schools going into construction this upcoming summer. Even with COVID, these projects are a big deal. There's a lot of effort that goes into them, and everything is moving forward, which is really great. Any thoughts, questions about this kind of process diagram? And while we're thinking about that, I didn't mention this last phase of development, which is maintenance and stewardship. And so, right at the end of construction, we want to be very clear that, the maintenance of the new green spaces is the responsibility of each of the individual schools. And we want to think about it not just as maintenance as kind of like a liability or a chore that needs to be done, but really the ownership and stewardship of that new space. We want to build these facilities for your schools, and it's really important that you guys are thinking about how you're going to use it and maintain it going forward. So that maintenance and stewardship phase is really, really important to make sure that all of the effort that we're putting into these schoolyard redevelopment projects are well received and owned by your school communities.
Austin, if I can
Yeah.
hop in real quick, just so you know that the MPS Foundation works with us. And so in the next few weeks, we should be getting an invite from the MPS Foundation to see how they can support you in your fundraising efforts. I know some of you are already reaching out to people that would like to donate to your school, large amounts perhaps. And so this is an opportunity to kind of get an idea, and we'll meet with them each year just as a reminder and what they can do to support you in the schools.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, the MPS Foundation is kind of like the nonprofit arm of MPS, and they take the lead, especially with local private foundations. And they've been really successful and really supportive of these projects as well. So the MPS Foundation is really important to engage as well. Yeah, so Lisa, Neeb, if you can drop this document into the chat window, perfect, thank you for that. The second page of this document spells out in a little bit more depth what we can expect for the conceptual planning year. These are the kind of high level agenda items for each of the upcoming meetings. So I'm just going to zoom in particular for the first 3 ones that will be, our first full ones, March, April, May. That first full green team meeting with each of your schools in March, we're going to play a little bit of catch up. We're a little bit behind with COVID and other things. So we're going to do an introduction and a charrette. And a charrette is a term that kind of denotes like an intensive design session. And so what Lisa Neeb and the team here has organized is some homework, we're calling it homework, that would be helpful to have available as we enter that first charrette meeting, so that we can have some concepts prepared for your schools to respond to. In normal non-COVID times, we would all get together around tables, we'd break up into small groups, we'd have students involved, and it would be really fun and exciting activity. And it's really, I don't want to say it, I guess, that we can't do that in person because it's a really fun, healthy activity. So we're trying our best to be able to make that a virtual experience that is engaging and provides opportunity for student and community voice through that as well, while making up some time here in addition. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of that homework that we need to get feedback on heading up to that charrette. And then we also, yes, it's still fun and inviting, but virtual, yeah. And then April is typically the meeting where we invite, where we advocate for inviting like elected representatives, maybe neighbors that aren't able to participate in the monthly green team meeting. Maybe that's parents, maybe that's your maintenance staff within the school, other school partners. So for example, if you guys, work with Arts at Large, an arts organization, nonprofit, that may not be explicitly involved in the schoolyard redevelopment process, we can certainly integrate arts programming and murals and, maybe performing arts into outdoor classroom design. And so it's really important to get those school partners that you guys have, successful relationships with to participate in this planning process as well. And really, we're kind of focusing on that April meeting to be the more public open house meeting. And that will be kind of looking at draft conceptual plans. CDS staff will have renderings of what that space could look like. And so they'll be very visual, and hopefully there'll be opportunities there to get some more feedback on your schoolyard redevelopment. And then in May, before you guys leave for summer, we'll have kind of the major components in a plan, and we'll want to kind of firm up where all the major components are on the schoolyard redevelopment. Each school is unique, and we approach it that way. There are themes that seem consistent across the schoolyard redevelopment projects. I think to date, we're up to 28 schools that have gone through some sort of process in this regards. And as we've observed these schoolyard redevelopment projects and supported and participated, there are certain themes that make a lot of sense. And working with MPS facilities, we've learned a lot about, what are the three different types of outdoor classrooms that we can expect. And we can certainly customize them to best fit what your curriculum is and what your school needs are. But largely, there's, kind of a small, medium, and large scale outdoor classroom, for example, that we can make sure that we're being feasible from the beginning in this. And then just kind of thinking about where all that, where it belongs on the schoolyard ahead of summer would be really helpful, so that over summer, Reflow and CDS staff can do some work kind of behind the scenes, so that when we come back in fall, we have some significant progress on the conceptual draft plans. And then, like I mentioned, the Green Schools Conference is typically the first week of August. And that, before the pandemic, that was a conference of about 300 some people. There were about 45 different exhibitors. And there was a lot of really great resources for green and healthy schools. Okay. We're going to keep moving on, and Lisa shared this in PDF as well, so you can absolutely share that with others as needed. And then we're going to page back over here. So what we can do in preparation for our next meeting. Our next meeting will be the individual school kickoff meetings. And so we've prepared a number of things here that we think would be helpful. This is a video, so if you click on this is a really quick short video, 2 minutes or so. I'm going to mute it. But these provide kind of before and after graphics of cohort 1 schools. And like I mentioned, there's 2 cohorts that went into construction already. But for your school communities, if you guys want to share information about, the process you guys are about to begin, this video may be helpful to just share with your parents and others. There's quotes in here and a lot of really strong visuals that help communicate the process you're about to begin. I'll just pause that there. There's also a report. So I'm going to click over to that. This is kind of a physical or virtual, just a document that helps to communicate a lot of the things that are in the video as well, and just in a little bit of a different format. But it also shows where the schools are. Again, those quotes, before, after shots, some of the demographics. As a part of the schoolyard redevelopment projects, we work really hard to try to find funding to be able to support a number of curricular connections, especially water focused. as well. And so you'll see graphics here of, partnerships with Upham Woods and again, MMSD, Schlitz Audubon and other organizations as well. But these are just some before, after, again, cohort 1. Just kind of keep paging through this. Some of these testimonials from students are really important as well. In this case, a 4-year-old from Starm said, I'm not going to litter because water carries trash down hills into the river or lake, which is awesome to hear from students. And that comes from all the curricular connections and really strong educators, as well as the schoolyard redevelopment. In this case, for example, Starms was redeveloped to have a porous play surface that's kind of the rubber surfacing, but it soaks in storm water. So it's a type of green infrastructure. But we were able to, think through artistically how we might be able to design that so that it, in this case, reflects Lake Michigan and the 3 major river waterways of Milwaukee. So when the students slide down these slides, they're sliding down the Kinnickinnic River, the Menominee River, and that kind of connections with gross motor play as well as stormwater management and artistic opportunities is really what we're trying to get with these projects, is across multiple objectives. And then here are some of the impacts for cohort 1. So that's one document you can certainly share if you'd like to. And then this virtual tour, in part because of COVID.
One quick
Yeah.
second, just so you all know, all of these links will also come in a follow-up email from me later today. So all of this is coming your way.
Awesome, thank you, Lisa. Because of COVID, we weren't able to properly celebrate our cohort 2 schools, which went into construction this last summer. So in lieu of that, we organized this virtual tour. I'm just gonna show this.
Welcome to Clement Avenue's Playground Redevelopment Project.
So this is Andrea, and Andrea is the Green Team Chair at Clement Avenue School. And this audio tour kind of runs you through this project, but it's virtual and you can kind of navigate it at your own pace if you'd like. Here, this is another example of a bioswale that manages stormwater. This is an example of an outdoor classroom. On the left-hand side, you can see more information about links to MMSD and kind of definition of what green infrastructure is. But this could be a really helpful tool as well if there's interest in kind of circulating what is a green and healthy schoolyard, especially one that what it looks like in the Milwaukee area. So that's what we call Clement's virtual tour. And then Lisa, would you mind describing the schoolyard surveys for us?
Yes, so the schoolyard survey is a very helpful tool for all of us on supporting your project to know what's important to your school. So we've put together a couple different versions of the survey. There's a Google form survey that you can send to anyone in your school community, including community partners, neighborhood residents, whoever you would normally send that communication to, that asks a series of questions, whether you're an adult or if you're a student. Those questions are a little bit different because we're trying to figure out, if you're an adult, how you think you might utilize that space with students, how you might take them outside, what kind of classes or what kind of curricular connections you're already thinking about could be possible on that site. And then if you're a student taking that survey, we're asking more about, what do they like to do outside already? What are some of their interests, and what would they like to do if we can make some changes to their schoolyard? So that information is helpful for us to start to put together some initial design concepts to share with you in our future meetings. And then it'll give you a chance to respond to some of those initial concepts and then guide the discussion as we make changes along the way. So that's going to be a Google form link that will come to you in an email. We also have PDF copies of student and adult surveys. So if it's easier for you to, if you're doing any supply pickups or your families are coming to pick up something, paper supplies along the way, you can hand those to them. We just ask that if the paper ones are completed, that they somehow get scanned and returned back to me, so I can gather all that information and share that on behalf of your school. So there are Spanish and English versions of the surveys, and we will make sure that those are accessible to you. And we appreciate any of your feedback and any of your ideas to help us start that design process.
Cool. Any thoughts or questions about some of the resources we have available for you to share with your communities, and like the surveys that we're asking you guys to fill out pretty quickly? We're asking them to be returned by March 4th. So that's just a couple of weeks away.
Justin, do you want to talk about the existing conditions map?
Yeah.
Are there a minimal, like I guess how many surveys or percentage, or is there a limit of how many we can send?
As many as you want, the more the better.
So this is to Lisa's point, with the kind of qualitative information obtained through the survey. We're also sending you site-specific site plans. These are 8.5 by 11. When I mentioned, pre-COVID, we would get together and we'd sketch on a map in person. To Carolyn's point, we're trying to kind of keep that intent by giving these plan drawings for you guys to share with your schools. Ideally, maybe your families can print these at home. If not, if this is something that could be printed at your school and distributed to your families, that would be great. If you have any issues with printing, please let us know. We can try to help support that. But these are kind of existing conditions maps. The blue dots are stormwater inlets. So those are kind of where all the stormwater is going. Big picture, 70-ish% of the costs of the schoolyard redevelopment can be associated with depaving and green infrastructure. So those infrastructure costs are really pretty high compared to some of the other things. And so starting first with where the stormwater is going, and kind of thinking about, should we put a bioswale around this stormwater inlet? Or is this a good place for maybe an underground cistern or stormwater trees? Along those lines, understanding where that stormwater is going around to these blue dots, these stormwater inlets, is really helpful. But the rest of it is, sketching ideas. Where would you want to see an outdoor classroom? Are there things that currently don't work on the school grounds that we should try to address through this planning effort?
Justin, if I could just jump in, it's also helpful for you to sketch out things that we shouldn't change or impact, right? If there's a certain area where the kids always line up to go into the building or parents pick up, put a little note or a sketch on there for us as well.
Yep, that's perfect. So each of your schools, like Lisa said, this will be emailed to you immediately after this meeting as well.
Just thinking, did you want to maybe pull up an example of the cohort 4 charrette drawings?
Yeah.
I don't know. Visuals help.
Would you mind finding one and linking one while I bring up the next piece?
Absolutely.
Also ahead of the snowfall, we were able to get out to each of your school sites and take photos. Lisa is also going to send a shared folder link, or we'll talk about it as we get closer to our next meeting. But we're sharing, we did take drone photos of each of the schoolyards as well. So for example, here's Kluge. We were able to get this right before the snow came this year. So that's really great that we have these. These can be really helpful in planning and just talking through where certain features are on the school grounds. We also, I walked around each of your schoolyards and took a ton of photos. So we can talk about most of the elements that might be out here on your school grounds. These are also very helpful for the conceptual plan documents to kind of call out certain features, but we have a lot of information already. Wilnisha Smith from Reflow has already coordinated a time to go into MPS archives to review all of the historical utility information for each of your schools. And then we'll also be doing a historical aerial review to understand what was at your location before your school was a school. So there's a lot of information there. And then Lisa, you're going to find cohort 4 example. Yeah, okay, perfect. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick. So this example, we've also put together examples of what you might expect for schoolyard redevelopment. So while those summary documents were really great for like before, after shots and testimonials, what we've done is we went through kind of all these different projects and we've called out certain components. So especially as you're thinking about sketching on the schoolyard plans, this is a helpful tool to kind of think about what are the different features that could go on a schoolyard. And so in this case, it's organized by different themes. So stormwater, green infrastructure, we're listing and showing visual representations of the different features we're talking about. You know, porous pavement, I talked about that, rubber surfacing, but also synthetic turf. This is at Longfellow on 21st and National-ish. This is porous, so stormwater can infiltrate through that space. And there's an underground cistern below this synthetic turf soccer field as well. And then, you know, removing pavement, that's kind of a really important one that, you know, in talking with schools, many of your schools are covered in asphalt and it doesn't have to be that way. And just kind of thinking through that process of when we remove pavement, you know, what could be done in place of that. And so at this point in time, you know, we're very much open to talking about removing as much pavement as appropriate, with the exception that, you know, basketball courts, four-square lineups, all those other things are really important. So we're not talking about removing all of the pavement, but we certainly are talking about removing some. I'm just going to kind of quick go through some of these other ones. So here are examples of outdoor educational elements. I mentioned the small scale, medium scale with these kind of shade sails, and then the larger scale. And then this is just kind of a call out as we're thinking through outdoor classrooms, especially in reference to COVID, you know, all the things that we're talking about may be of extra interest with COVID. But also thinking through, you know, siting is kind of a term that architects and engineers like to use, is like, where do we put the outdoor classroom on the schoolyard? And we want to consider, you know, proximity to other features, like if there's a lot of street noise, or, you know, more on a positive note, like, can we put the outdoor classroom next to a bioswale, for example, so that your classrooms can have some meaningful conversations around pollinators and stormwater management in that space as well. But this tool or this document is helpful, you know, talking about play features, goggable, different kinds of traffic gardens, which are, you know, pavement markings to help support bike safety and road safety on your school grounds. MPS Rec has some really great agility pathways and colorful markings that we can make use of as well. And then a lot of schools are interested in school gardens. So that could be raised bed gardens, could be hoop houses, or, you know, larger scale, which is a full greenhouse. Each of these have different fundraising targets as well, but also thinking through mindfulness. And then some of the more engaging pieces like murals, pavement art, and then also thinking about how that space might be used after school hours is really appropriate as well. Some schools have a real interest in using their outdoor classrooms for performing arts, or maybe presentations to families could be done in these outdoor classroom areas, but also thinking about, you know, how could that space be repurposed, you know, after school hours as well. Just a couple more of these amenities. Signage will be an important component. We're building outdoor discovery carts. If funds are raised, ideally for each of the schools that go through this process to help support outdoor learning. For the chain link fencing that we're not able to remove around the perimeter of the site, thinking about how can we activate that space through some culturally relevant signage, thinking through kind of use of wood and natural materials so that we can have some really great looking spaces that double as maybe balance and support more gross motor activities as well. And then thinking through how we can engage your school communities, surrounding neighborhood. These are just some ideas to get the creative thoughts moving. But in some cases, student green teams have been organized, and the students have created dioramas, physical dioramas, or sketches themselves, and they present that to school leadership teams, green teams. In the past, we've had really successful student dioramas represented at the annual conference as well. So if you guys decide to really take that ball and run with it, we'd be more than happy to kind of provide a platform for your students to present through other means as well. Thinking through those design charrettes and stakeholder engagement. And then also community fundraisers and sponsorships. A lot of schools organize bake sales, for example, especially around elections. And then Earth Day tends to be, it's the end of April, and that tends to be a really a good milestone each year for a lot of the schools that go through this process to kind of reaffirm their interests in green, healthy schools and their maintenance and stewardship commitments each year as well. In this case, Longfellow each year organizes a neighborhood cleanup that also now includes their schoolyard as a part of their annual Earth Day activities. And then thinking through groundbreaking events, ribbon cutting, and those kind of virtual storytelling, especially now with COVID. But we'd be happy if there's interest to be able, and funding available to be able to do, like a virtual tour before the schoolyard gets redeveloped as well. I think that could be a really cool place to explore. But Lisa, I see you had some links in here. Which one should I take a look at real quick? Zablocki maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to explain this one?
So this is an example when we were able to gather last February. Zablocki has an active student green team. So I believe this was a classroom full of third grade students that all joined together, and we paired them up in small groups and talked about some of the things they like to do on the schoolyard and what they wished they could do. And then we gave them all copies of those site plans and colorful markers, and we asked them to make their schoolyard what they would really like it to be. So they had these really awesome conversations where they were sharing their ideas with each other and trying to problem solve where they wanted to place all these different features on their schoolyard. And then we asked for them to present those to the rest of the group so we could talk about if there were any common themes or things that may not be possible for one reason or another, or how we can adjust some of those ideas to really include their perspective. So those site plans that we'll be sending you, the more that you can encourage people to include their ideas, what they really would like to see, we can figure out all the appropriate spacing and scale and those sorts of things. But it's really powerful for us to see those ideas and those voices reflected in these drawings, because we really know what's most important and meaningful for your school community. So I don't know, I think we probably had like 10, 12 different drawings that came out of that session, which was really cool.
Yeah, and one of the students, she had an interest in lavender and having like calming spaces on their school grounds, and that really helped to inform where the native landscaping and more of the kind of the social, emotional, quieter spaces on the school grounds would go. And especially because of her feedback, that those lavender was something that she really felt strongly about for the tactile experiences and more of the sensory, the smells of lavender as well. So there's a lot of really great feedback on that. And then this one from Ben Franklin, another example.
Just another example. And it's interesting to see how the designs differ between students and the adults that participate as well. All of that feedback is very important for us to really prioritize what we show in the conceptual plan for you to respond to.
Great. Okay. Any thoughts, questions? We're okay. So the other thing is I'll say that the other updates, again, cohort 3, you guys are in cohort 5, but cohort 3 is going into construction this upcoming summer. That's very exciting. We're getting bids. MPS is getting bids back within the next couple of weeks. So we'll know what gets built. There's the Green Schools Consortium of Milwaukee, GSCM, is this network of around 900 people in the Milwaukee area that are supportive of your schools and green healthy schools in general. And each month-ish, Lisa Neeb and Reflow put out an annual or a monthly newsletter. In that December newsletter, we announced the selection of your schools. So we're sharing that information with this larger network across the Milwaukee area as well. And as you guys progress, we'll continue to update that network as well. And then our next steps are our meetings. Everyone, hopefully you can all see these meetings. I can zoom in one more time to make sure everyone sees that. But Lisa, do you want to speak to, are we all set with all these meeting dates? Are there any changes? Anyone have any thoughts about changes? Are we all set?
From my knowledge, we are all ready to go. You will be receiving follow-up reminder emails from me for these meetings that are scheduled next week. And then again, there'll be all of the appropriate links for your school. Make sure you have your school site plan, that you have the appropriate survey to collect the feedback that we're asking for. So more to come from me in emails.
All right. Any last thoughts from anyone? Otherwise, I think we're probably good to break.
Oh, real quick, for the meeting next week, it is very important that you bring your calendars. Our goal is during that meeting to set our green team meetings for March, April, and May. So please come ready with calendars so we can talk through those different timeframes and get those on the calendar so we all can prepare and be ready for them.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We're looking forward to the individual school meetings where we can get to know each other a little bit more, and we'll talk soon. Congrats again. We're very excited. Talk soon.